In the spring of 1940, darkness was consuming Europe. The Nazi war machine, a relentless tide of steel and fire, had swept across the continent. France, a great bastion of liberty, was on the verge of collapse. Belgium and the Netherlands had already fallen. The entire British army was trapped, its back to the sea at Dunkirk. And in London, the whispers of surrender were growing louder. A siren song of a negotiated peace with a tyrant. Britain stood utterly terrifyingly alone. The world held its breath, expecting the final inevitable blow. But one man refused to bend. One man, a political outcast summoned in his nation's darkest hour, chose defiance over defeat. This is the story of how Winston Churchill, armed with little more than the English language and an unbreakable will, saved a nation and forged a legend. As he later wrote, he felt his entire life had been a preparation for this very moment. To really get the magnitude of Churchill's task, you have to appreciate the sheer despair that gripped Britain in May 1940. The official policy of appeasement had failed, spectacularly. Hitler had proven he couldn't be reasoned with, only resisted. But resistance looked futile. The German military had perfected a terrifying new kind of warfare, the Blitzkrieg, or lightning war, and it had shattered the armies of Europe in a matter of weeks. Now, with the British Expeditionary Force cornered at Dunkirk, many in the highest levels of government saw only one way out. The Foreign Secretary, Lord Halifax, argued forcefully that Britain should seek peace terms through Italy's Mussolini, believing the nation couldn't possibly win alone. Surrender didn't just seem possible. To many it seemed logical. The island was isolated, its army was facing annihilation, and its allies were gone. The full fury of the enemy was about to be turned on them. Hitler himself was convinced that he had to break Britain or lose the war. Into this atmosphere of dread stepped a man who, for many, was the absolute last resort. A man whose career was littered with controversy, from the disastrous Gallipoli campaign in World War I to his lonely years in the political wilderness of the 1930s, when his constant warnings about Germany fell on deaf ears. That man was Winston Churchill, appointed Prime Minister on May 10, 1940, the very same day Germany invaded France. He wasn't the preferred choice for many, but as one politician noted, he was the only man we have for this hour. In those dark early days, Churchill had few real weapons to fight with, so he attacked with words instead. As the journalist Beverly Nichols wrote, he took the English language and sent it into battle. His speeches weren't just political addresses, they were declarations of war, tools of mobilization, and a source of incredible strength for a nation under siege. Just 3 days after taking office, he stood before a skeptical House of Commons and laid out his policy in the starkest terms imaginable. He had nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. No easy promises, no false hope, just the brutal reality of the struggle ahead. His goal, he said, was simple. Victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory however long and hard the road may be. It was a jolt of cold, bracing reality that swept away the lingering talk of appeasement. Then, as France fell and the miracle of deliverance at Dunkirk brought over 300,000 soldiers home, disarmed but not defeated, Churchill again rose to define the moment. He reminded everyone, wars are not won by evacuations. What he said next was maybe the most powerful display of rhetorical willpower in modern history. He built a crescendo of defiance. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. That repetition wasn't an accident. It was a drumbeat of resolve that united the people in a single unyielding purpose. He wasn't speaking at the people. He was speaking for them, constantly using we instead of you, making himself one of them. He balanced grim realism with soaring inspiration. A few weeks later, with the threat of invasion looming, he delivered another masterpiece. He contrasted the abyss of a new dark age that would follow failure with the hope that, if they stood firm, this could be their finest hour. He used powerful, clear metaphors of light and darkness that gave the struggle a moral clarity everyone could understand and rally behind. Churchill's leadership wasn't just on the airwaves. He made himself Minister of Defense, putting himself at the absolute heart of the British war machine. His sheer force of personality streamlined decision-making, and he drove his staff and himself with a relentless energy, often working 18-hour days. His first great test was the Battle of Britain. He knew that air superiority was the key to survival. He backed the Royal Air Force's plan to conserve its precious fighter planes for home defense, resisting calls to send more squadrons to the doomed fight in France. That decision was critical. It meant that when the Luftwaffe came, the RAF was ready. It was during this fight that he immortalized the pilots with the unforgettable line, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." But one of his most audacious moves came after German bombers, possibly due to a navigational error during raids on industrial targets, dropped bombs on civilian parts of London on August 24, 1940. Churchill's response was immediate. He ordered a retaliatory bombing raid on Berlin. The first raid on the night of August 25th did little physical damage, but the psychological impact on Hitler was immense. Enraged that the RAF could strike his capital, the Führer made a fatal error. In early September, he ordered the Luftwaffe to shift its main attacks from RAF airfields and radar stations to full-scale bombing of London. This was the start of the Blitz. It was hell for Londoners, but it gave the battered RAF the crucial breathing room it needed to repair, regroup, and ultimately win the battle for the skies. Even as Britain fought for its life, Churchill's mindset was relentlessly offensive. He refused to just sit and wait for the enemy. In July 1940, he ordered the creation of the Special Operations Executive, SOE, giving it a simple, chilling instruction: set Europe ablaze. This secret army, nicknamed the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, was tasked with espionage, sabotage, and supporting resistance movements across occupied Europe. At the same time, he created the Commandos, special forces designed for coastal raids to disrupt German operations. He even prioritized the Mediterranean, refusing to withdraw the fleet and, in a monumental gamble, sending a huge convoy of Britain's precious tanks to Egypt in August 1940 to take the fight to Italy. Churchill's willpower became the nation's willpower. His charisma wasn't just in his speeches, it was in his actions. He was a visible leader, constantly visiting bomb-damaged areas of London during the Blitz. His appearances, often standing on a pile of rubble, gave courage to the very people bearing the brunt of the assault. He shared their danger and their grief, forging an unbreakable bond. This personal resilience was matched by his diplomatic foresight. Even when Britain stood alone, he was already playing the long game. He worked tirelessly to cultivate a personal relationship with U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, appealing to their shared values as English-speaking peoples. This friendship laid the groundwork for the crucial Lend-Lease Agreement and eventually the Europe First grand strategy that would prioritize Germany's defeat once America entered the war. Churchill knew Britain couldn't win alone, but he was determined that it would fight alone until help could arrive. His force of personality was instrumental in building and holding together the Big Three alliance with the United States and the Soviet Union. He unified opposing political parties into a single wartime government and staked everything on the conviction that fighting on was the only moral choice. He was under no illusions, privately admitting to a general in June 1940, "You and I will be dead in 3 months' time." Yet he never allowed that grim possibility to infect his public resolve. He embodied the very spirit of defiance he preached, a symbol of resilience and unshakable hope in one of humanity's darkest hours. In 1945, on Victory in Europe Day, Churchill stood before a roaring crowd in London and declared, "This is your victory." The crowd roared back, "No, it is yours." The truth, of course, was somewhere in between. It was the victory of a people who refused to break, led by a man who refused to even consider surrender. Winston Churchill's leadership was a masterclass in the power of human will. With the sheer force of his words, he transformed a story of inevitable defeat into one of heroic endurance. Through his daring, often risky strategies, he turned a desperate defense into the foundation for an eventual attack. He took a nation on the brink of collapse, staring into the abyss, and single-handedly forged its resolve to fight on. He is the ultimate example of how one determined individual can alter the course of history, proving that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the human spirit can be the most powerful weapon of all. If you want to explore more stories of the incredible figures who shaped our world, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into history. And let us know in the comments, What part of Churchill's leadership do you find most inspiring? Thanks for watching.